I have spent just a crazy amount of time playing God of War over the last 2 weeks, and it is an experience like no other. It brings forth a new sort of gaming experience by leaning on so many other games that did things great. God of War does it just that little bit better. I was fortunate enough to do a review of that. This week, though, Andy Borkowski, Nick Owen for VGS. We've both been playing the game.
Oh yeah, tons and tons.
Yeah, nearly
late nights. Very late nights on this one.
So I just want to take a little bit more time and talk about essentially what this game was in longer form with someone else, because these are the conversations you're going to want to have as you're playing it. So we're going to be very cognizant of spoilers. We're going to try not to dive into that.
I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah, but it's very much in the ether. Like I've been dreaming about God of War and how to solve those damn chests.
Yeah, some of them, again, I gave up on a couple of them because I don't have time for this right now. I gotta get through it.
Yeah,
because right off the bat, it took me aback because it's not the traditional God of War game.
Yeah,
and
not
so
at all.
it kind of becomes. There's a lot more to do than in previous God of War games, and I had to time management a little bit just to kind of get to the point where we could start having these discussions.
Yeah, because you can get lost really quickly early on if you're trying to get every little thing. And I would suggest, especially until you get to an area where there's a lake, don't try to get every little thing, because it'll really kind of destroy the story for you.
It does, yeah. Like it becomes, there's a very big moment that is obvious of, oh, this is where the whole thing opens up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like, don't dilly-dally too much until you get to that point, and then it's just open season to like find everything.
Because I remember when I was preparing for the review, I had conversations with you saying like, I don't know about this dynamic, because it seems as if they are split between telling a great narrative story and a great RPG collect everything story. But as soon as you get to that lake and it blows up and you can kind of do one or the other, or the amazing times when they mesh those two perfectly, like some of the side quests, I don't know if you've had this, because I'm going 100%, you're kind of trying to get to the end as quickly as you can. A lot of the side quests that you get from the dwarves or from the spirits in this world are collective. So the first quest you did 5 hours in is going to be built upon in the one you do 10 hours and the one you do 15. And there's all these little side stories that normally in a game, even an RPG, would give you kind of a B storyline. Almost every single one gives you some insight on Kratos and his son and their dynamic.
Yeah, the dynamic of them, or like the world around them and how that world affects them, because Kratos is very much a newcomer to this world and doesn't really know a lot of it, because he came and went into seclusion almost immediately, and so he doesn't really know anything about what's going on around him. So you'll kind of be going towards one mission and then 3 more will pop up, and you kind of branch off and you end up doing one of the side missions before you go to the mission you were originally with. And it kind of also, it tends to inform that what you're originally starting at a little bit.
You found a lot of treasure maps, right?
Yeah, treasure
I've
maps
gotten a
is what I was
bunch.
going for,
And I've noticed that, like, I was really worried, because I'm one of those terrible gamers that uses like a Prima strategy guide for their gaming. Yeah, I'm like one of the, it's blasphemous, people hate me. But I love having that guide there and making sure I get every little thing. The treasure maps, almost every single one is so fluid and found naturally as you progress through the story. And it'll just say like, oh man, we got to go to this elf light post. Well, what do you know? That's where I'm going next. And as long as you like work slowly to do everything at once, it won't become overwhelming. A game like Skyrim or what Bethesda does is great, but it gets so overwhelming.
Yeah, this game definitely does find a better balance than a Bethesda game like a Skyrim, where it is kind of, you get off the beaten path and you do search around a lot, but it does bring you back in with, it naturally feeds you towards where you're supposed to go with a lot of stuff you'll find. Or like you need to advance your armor quite a bit.
Yes.
And so it kind of, when you need to advance your armor to complete side quests, you have to be forced back into the main quest, or else you don't get anything, because some of it's not available until you complete certain.
Or it'll be so difficult that like I've been, rowing about on this beautiful lake and finding some level 8s when I'm a level 4 that just kill you in one hit.
Yeah, they'll surprise you too.
Yeah.
They kind of sneak up on you.
And there's moments where you think like, okay, I want to fight against this, but it does a really great job of telling you like, you know what? This is not essential. This is a cool obstacle you can come back to, why don't you get in some story time? What's Kratos doing? You know, play through the mission a little bit more. And they even do that really well with access to collectibles. So if you find that you're playing this game and you can't get a certain box because it's in, you know, red tangles, or there's a crystal that's stopping you from going through, just remember, and eventually you'll be able to open it. And when you do come back, you usually have a reason to, like, they'll have a mission or something.
It kind of forces you back through. Like, you'll see them early on that I clearly can't get to that, but eventually the story will force you even back through that zone, so you then have the opportunity to get that. And even some areas, it'll force you. You have to skip over it, and then it'll force you back. And there's more stuff that you can't get, and then you have to leave, and then it brings you right back.
2 or 3 times you're going to the same place.
Because it's very Metroidvania in its style. Like, it's a lot of backtracking and a lot of going forward. There are some areas that if you do it thoroughly the first time, you never go back to. Some of the side quest areas that you end up
but
in.
Only a few. Like, there's almost every, because again, going for every single goddamn thing,
there's so much.
There's hundreds of collectibles. There's hundreds of boxes to open. There's ravens that you need to kill.
Every spot has its particular set of collectibles. There's tons of armor sets. And
let's go into that in a moment. Right. Let's answer the criticism that many people have had, or the concern that this is not going to be like the God of Wars of the past. And in a lot of ways, I'll say it's not. And the ways that it is, we still have those incredible set pieces.
Yes, that's kind of what it is. I know a concern you had was a lot of your going around for loot kind of draw it away from the story a lot, but I feel like the big God of War moments drag you right back into it with, like, thunderous, like, just amplifies you right back into the story, because there's these huge God of War moments. There's these monsters bigger than life, bigger than mountains, and it pulls you right back in, and it does give you that God of War feel. And it is also, a lot of Kratos' behavior in this is still influenced by his past life.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he plays it very close to the vest, but you can definitely tell it informs him. Like, even early on, I don't know, sorry. Early on, I don't know how much of this I can talk about, but you kind of find out that it's a little implied that Kratos can't read.
Yeah,
in this new world.
Yeah, it's suggested that like, Kratos doesn't know what's happening around him. He can't see the signs. You know, it's not working out. He doesn't know
anything, because, like, all of the lore stuff that you find, and mostly everyone you interact with, it's all done through Atreus' eyes, because he grew up in this world, and his mother,
your son in the game,
yes, the son, and the mother, Kratos' wife, Atreus' mom, obviously, gave a lot of information to him and kind of taught him about this world. Where Kratos,
that's a beautiful moment too, because I found myself. Because you start the game, and it's right at the beginning. It's been seen on the trailers, so it's not a spoiler, but it's the death of Kratos' wife or lover and the mother of Atreus. You learn a lot of what that mom was like through the son.
Yeah, through the son, and other characters. Or as you find newer things, a little bit more of, like, oh, my mom told me about that, or oh, I've heard rumors of this from mom, or it's always
a cool way.
Back to her.
It's a brilliant way that I wish RPGs did a lot more. Like, there's a lot that RPGs could learn from God of War, of how to make a confluence of story and gameplay. And one of the ways that this game does it really well is just that, those special moments where you want to hear how this world reflects the characters that you care about. So it has the big set pieces. This is something I really want to touch on. This game is, like, kind of shockingly good to the point that it takes other games that are great at something and does it better.
Yes. Because to go back to Skyrim, just the collectathon and side missions.
So look, Skyrim open world, I think God of War's not open world, but kind of like semi-open world, is more compelling and better done than what we've seen with Bethesda in the last little while. The writing is what kind of brings it better, because in Skyrim, you'll end up in, like, cool side missions, and they'll be funny or they'll be, like, interesting, but they have nothing to do with the main plot or the main world. It's kind of like, oh, an elf wants me to go steal something, and you go off for 2 hours, and you come back and you go do something else, and it's forgotten about. But in this, like, a side mission, you'll go to a side mission and it'll branch off into another side mission, and they're all tied together, or, like, you'll end up on another end of the map, and it's
a character that they were talking about for the first side mission, but now you're way over here, like way later in the game, and that's just that character that they were talking about in that first one.
It connects very well.
Yeah, always. And yeah, it's very strong writing is what I feel. And even like the quieter moments when you're just exploring the Lake of Nines, where you're just kind of in the boat and they're just talking to each other back and forth.
That's great character moments. Like that is akin to Mass Effect's elevators and in Dragon Age when you would have the characters talking to each other. Like it is equal to, it's very similar to the elevators of the original Mass Effect, even stronger because it's centralized with two characters. So it's more put together and more comprehensive than the open worlds that we see in Skyrim. Let's go to the combat, because this borrows heavily from the Soulsborne series of games. And for me, for someone that's not an extremist and really loves what Souls offers for being punishingly difficult, I love this game because it's more accessible, but it still has the addictive qualities of Souls. Excuse me, that make them so great.
Yeah, it's got that, like, the Souls, like, make sure you dodge. Like, make sure you dodge. Absolutely. But it ties in a lot of godly powers. Like, throughout the game, you get different, like, you can tweak your stuff a little bit, and it'll give you different advantages. And so, like, you're not just dodge rolling. Sometimes you'll just bust out a power move, and you can clear everyone around you to kind of get a breather, and it definitely helps. And then it ties in with the God of War, is there are those graphic kills when you get an enemy to a certain... It's not health in this one. It's
like stun.
Stun. It's like a stun phase more. And then, you do those brutal, like, I'm going to rip your head right off your body, or I'm going to throw your own spear through you. And it ties it back to the God of War style, but it's not the old God of War where I can just smash one button and
not at all. Like it deals with the fundamentals of Souls, where if you don't parry, if you don't dodge on certain moves, especially if you're fighting beasts that are higher levels,
and you come across those really quickly. Like early on, I was just hitting a button and I could get through it, but like an hour and a half into it, you can't do that anymore. Like,
and I kind of like that now, because I will face, there's a lot of individual enemies that are very high level, just like you would see in kind of like Soulsborne, and you really have an opportunity to fight them when you're maybe level 5 and they're level 7. That's a huge difference. There's a little skull beside their name rather, and if you don't use those Souls tactics, you'll die. So it is about chipping away the health, and I love that God of War offers that, but it's more accessible. So I understand if people don't think that's superior, but for me, and I think for a lot of players that loved the addictive quality of that game, but maybe couldn't deal with as much of the punishing nature of it, God of War offers something. So combat boom. What else do we want to get into? Well, what about, like, I'll even say it, a lot of RPGs like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. I have spent a majority of my time speaking to you about BioWare games. They stuck in God of War with just a few characters and made them work really, really well. I would say that this is on par with a very good BioWare style game like Mass Effect 2 or Dragon Age Origins, especially in terms of how a story is told and characters.
Like it definitely pulls from that, and like I would say it's as strong as those, but with like the writing of like a Naughty Dog game, like a Last of Us. And so it takes those moments, and then it also avoids the problem that BioWare games have where you can randomly swap characters in and out. And so it's like, oh, if I didn't have this right character in this right world, I miss this entire side story. In this, it is just those two central characters, so you get all of the side
plus a friend parts. But that's all we're gonna say. An amazing friend.
Oh yeah, no, he's wonderful.
That adds a lot. But that's what I mean. I think you're absolutely right that it uses, again, this is a game that takes the fundamentals of the greatest games that are available, tweaks them to be centralized and work within their formula. They're not just trying to ape them so they're just as good. They realize, hey, we couldn't have 12 other characters because we want to make the relationship between father and son and between character and world work really, really well. So let's see what Dragon Age did. Let's see what Mass Effect did. Oh, they focused on a reactive world. So when you said something and talked about it, maybe you would see that in the world. They focused on characters having feelings more than angry and sad and maybe horny, depending on what kind of game you're looking at. Like there's there's degrees here, and they made characters seem vulnerable.
Oh, even like Kratos, the God of War, is very vulnerable at a lot of times in this game. And even sometimes he's trying to be tight-lipped, and Atreus calls him on stuff, and he has to like open up just a smidge, and he for a long time he keeps many secrets from Atreus.
A lot of one-word answers.
Yeah, a lot of one-word answers, and a lot of unintentional funny moments too with his one-word answers. Very early on, it's like 2 minutes in, they go hunting and he's, let's hunt, and he's like, where? In the way of deer. Like, it's just a very
where do we go?
Yeah.
Which way did the deer go? In the way of deer.
In the way of deer. Yeah. And then he also just a lot of I don't know.
Yeah. No.
And then Atreus catches him and he's like, yeah, no, let me guess, you don't know. Like Atreus evolves throughout this.
So that's
like a whole
that's
lot.
An incredible moment that I want to get into. There's a lot of games that will give you a character that changes with you. I think of BioShock as another game, BioShock 2 in particular. A lot of people didn't like it, but I was all up on BioShock.
Play it.
All right, well, that's for you. But there are characters. Get a little closer. You're getting out of frame, my friend.
Sorry.
So there are moments in those games, especially in BioShock 2, where your characters that are connected with you change and learn based on the choices that you've made. And this is a game in God of War that does that through the narrative and does it through gameplay. At the point I am right now, my son is almost more lethal than I am.
Yeah.
Like I'll fire off 4 arrows now, and I'll use the crow attack that does an incredible amount of electricity damage, and everyone will be dead around me. Kratos didn't even take his axe out yet.
Yeah, no.
Plus, the character from the very... I know I'm monopolizing everything here, but when your son first kills someone, which happens very early on, it is such an affecting moment.
Yeah, and it's very early on, and it is kind of the first time that like Kratos shows like actual affection.
Yeah.
Because start of the game, you're like, does he even like this kid? And then when that moment happens, it is actually like, oh, he cares so much about this
in comparison to the end of the game, or even the moments in the middle where you have taught your son to be self-sufficient, but to the point that it's actually damaging to the core relationship things that made his son special. So there's so many layers here. There's such nuance. If we did have some sort of final thought of what God of War really offers to the modern gaming and to gamers today, I truly do, and I said this in the review, think this is one of the greatest productions of all of these singular elements put together. It has a better open world than what we've seen in games that are traditionally known for open worlds. Bethesda's, it has the fundamentals of the Souls series, but not the objective, painful way that it can punish you. And it has, in many ways, borrows from the BioWare Dragon Age Mass Effect character and relationship system, but even streamlines that so it works well. It's a reactive world. And I don't know who wouldn't enjoy this game.
Yeah, it definitely hits a broader audience, because the early ones, if you weren't into that, you just aren't into that. But this one, it does branch out, and it does become just kind of the masterpiece. Like, I think this will go down as this generation, like the PlayStation 4's, one of its best games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'd put that up there with anything else, like toe-to-toe with any other game that come out.
It just speaks to how when you give developers time and let them really play with these sort of themes, they can bring them all together and create something that speaks to all different sorts of games. Like, I don't think that every game should have elements of all sorts of games. I love indie games that just do one thing really, really well. But if you're a AAA studio that's spending tens of millions of dollars to make a game, why not create something that can do everything really well if it serves the story? So I'm Andy Borkowski. I cannot at all recommend this more than I am right now. I think it's an incredible experience. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts is, this will go down definitely when the Game of Year stuff comes around. Unfortunately, it's a very tough year come the end of the year, but I think this is right up there for #1 contender. I think it is, like I said, it's going to go down as one of the best games for the PlayStation 4. And if you have a mild interest in it, I suggest playing it, because it will hook you almost immediately.